All right, who wants to, Neil, did you want to start us off?
Well, welcome everybody. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce this subject to you all. And my name is Neil M. Cortez. A number of you already know me. And I am the assistant head for cataloging and metadata services at the University of Maryland. This workshop is going to deal with Wikidata and how to use Wikidata as an entry point to the world of linked data by creating entities, that is, authorities. I will let Sarah introduce her.
Hi, I'm Sarah Havdi. I'm the Monographs and Media Cataloger at the University of Maryland Libraries. I'm a member of Neil's unit, and I'm also one of the co-leads of our Wikidata editing project.
Excellent. And I'll be posting a few links here and there in the chat window. You must have all received an email or a confirmation or something saying that one of the requisites for this workshop, if you want to participate in the hands-on part of it, is that you should have a Wikidata account and hopefully a couple of examples of people that you want to add to Wikidata. So why Wikidata? I posted a little article that explains a little more about how Wikidata is being used these days. So Wikidata is an open source. It is open to everybody to contribute. And we are all aware that authority files around the globe are getting more and more connected and integrated into this world of linked data universe. I also posted the link to VIAF, the Virtual International Authority file. I'm sure most of you already know it, but if you don't, just click on it. It kind of brings together different identity files around the world, authority files around the world. The point of Wikidata is that it is easy to create. It is probably easier than creating a mark authority. And at the same time, it populates into VIAF. It links into VIAF. Right now, actually, Wikidata is not a contributor. It's only a reference. That means if you create something on Wikidata that is not on VIAF, it will not necessarily appear there. But if you connect what you created to, say, the National Library of Israel Authority file through VIAF, then the two records will be linked, and that thus improving the discoverability, right? So as I say, it's linked open data. Anybody can contribute, yet it links to curated thesauri, and at the same time, it's quite effective, and it's crowd curated, which has its good things and is not so good, okay? It is flexible enough. It is fitting for quick authority work. At the University of Maryland, for instance, we use it a lot for our special collections, because it is much easier to create a number of people on Wikidata than to go and create a mark authority file that goes into NAF, right? So Sarah, you want to take over from here?
Sure. And I'm going to try to share my screen. Aha. I have too many browser tabs open. Here we go. So this is the main page of Wikidata. And as Neil mentioned, there are a lot of good things and a lot of bad things about it being a community that anyone can contribute to. One of the good things is that it has a very robust set of resources to help people get started, to help people find answers, to help people sort through problems. It has a very active community, and in general, it's a very friendly community. I personally think it's a little bit friendlier than Wikipedia because Wikidata has slightly less rigorous guidelines for items that can be added. So there's less gatekeeping and behavior that shuts people down. So I'm just going to show off a few resources that can help you get started. First is the Wikidata help page, the main help page, and that is located on the left panel here. So just click on help. And as you can see, there is quite a lot to work through and look around. There's an introduction. They have little interactive tutorials, which are really handy. There's a glossary, notability guidelines. And then as you get further into editing Wikidata, excuse me, there are pages to help you figure out how to edit items, to use properties in a more advanced way, to add qualifiers, to add resources, sources for references. And these are some of the things we'll also go over today, but the information here will really go into detail. And you can just sort of explore around. It's quite in-depth, but also I think approachable. Another helpful resource is the pilot page, or the project page for the PCC Wikidata pilot. And I'll add links for all these resources in the chat in a moment. But this page gives an overview of the PCC pilot program and also provides a lot of resources that participants have gathered. And these are usually specifically helpful for librarians and library workers editing Wikidata. These are some of the generic Wikidata resources. These are some pilot-specific resources, which can be helpful if you're coming from an authority background, sort of getting used to a different kind of editing interface. And here you can see where some of the participants come from and take a look at some of their project pages. So the University of Maryland Libraries project page is also on there. So you can get a sense of what we've done as an example of how you might use a wiki project at your library. And one of the resources that I want to highlight under Wikidata resources is this wiki project that was put together by Hilary Thorson, who was previously the Wikimedian in residence at Stanford and is now working with the PCC pilot program. So this is a page called Practical Wikidata for Librarians. And it's immensely useful. It has a collection of tools, guidelines on adding references, some example data models that libraries and other GLAM institutions have come up with. It's really got a lot of resources and more than we really have time to get into now, but I highly recommend this for digging into on your own time. And I will put those links in the chat now.
And by the way, I just posted also 3 links that I'm going to refer in the next section, in case you want to access that. Now I need to share my screen of my 2 monitors and a bunch of tabs. So we will see if we are lucky. You should see a Wikidata record, aren't you? Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to speak briefly about how to add properties to an existing item on Wikidata. Every statement in Wikidata is a triple. The subject is the heading, the property is the verb, and the value is the predicate. Subject, property, value. It's all about linking one with the other. So if you want to open a new tab or a window, you can go to the finding aid of the University of Maryland for Klein Schaffner. I hope it's pronounced Klein and not butchering somehow. Okay, so in this finding aid, you see that there is a bunch of information about this person. Now, in a separate tab, you can go ahead and open the Wikidata record for Klein S. Schaffner, which you also have in the chat window. And over here, you see that the record is really bare bones. Here you have the name of the person, which is always put by convention on Wikidata in a straight and not inverted. So there will be Klein S. Schaffner and not Schaffner Klein S, and without dates. A short description. I created this a couple hours ago. Then you have three statements over here. This person is an instance of a human, and his date of birth is April 18th of April of 1914. He was born in a place called Freeland. All right, so let's add something else. Let's add where was this person, what was the date of death of this person. So I type date of death. This is kind of the verb. So I'm talking about Clyde has date of death, and here I introduce the date of death, which is, if somebody has the finding aid, oh, no, there was a huge bar.
Somebody asked about gender in the chat.
Right, you could add the gender. Let's try first adding the gender, and I'll explain to you something about the gender. This Clyde was a male. All right. There is always the issue with adding the gender, a little bit like adding the gender to any authorities. So as a practice at the University of Maryland, we try to avoid adding the gender because of issues mostly of transsexuals, transgender people in, and I don't know, changes in gender. But okay, yes, you can introduce the gender first thing if you want. Okay. So getting to the date of death of this person, you see that he died in West Laurel, Maryland.
Neil, I'm sorry. Do you mind enlarging the screen? I think it's just the way it's showing up. It's a little small. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, perfect.
So this person was died in this date in West Laurel, Maryland. I go back, add a new statement, type date of death, add it here, publish, and let's say place of death, Laurel, city in Maryland, add it. Okay, so this is how we create statements. We just put the verb, that is the property, and then the content, which is the predicate of the phrase. One thing that is super important whenever you create a record is to link it to other existing vocabularies, other existing authority files. VF is the most intuitive. You just link it there, and from there it populates to a number of them. Sometimes the person is not on VF at all. So in this case, the person is not. I'm going to add it. I'm going to add a statement about this person being on SNAC, the archival. So I type SNAC Erica ID, the number, enter. Okay, as you see, the addition is really fast and really simple. Okay, Sarah, you want to take it?
Sure. Okay, screen share. Okay, I can find the tab a little bit faster that time. That's great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to create a new item from scratch if you don't have one already existing. So I'm going to use another couple of names from the University of Maryland finding aids. Really great resource for this kind of thing because a lot of them are not in authority files, are not already in Wikidata. So that's why we've been working with them quite a lot. So sorry, trying to get the Zoom interface a little bit further. There we go. So the first step is to find out if the item already exists on Wikidata, of course. So like you would for most authority work, we're going to search the database to see if it's there. In this case, there is no item for W. Joseph Moyer. It looks like there might be some scientific papers that maybe share either Moyer or Joseph somewhere in them. So in that case, we are clear to go and we click on create a new item, and that's in the left panel here again. And if you click on create a new item from the left panel, it will show you a blank form where you enter the label, description, and any aliases if you have like a full name or a pseudonym or anything like that. So we're going to put W. Joseph Moyer in, and we're going to put a short descriptive statement. So let's see, Maryland State climatologist and professor. Let's see, and we don't have his full name in this case because this is a very sparse record. If we knew what the W stood for, we could add that in if we had a nickname or something. And then we just click create, and Wikidata will automatically generate your new item and will automatically assign it an identifier. And that's always going to begin with Q followed by a string of numbers. So from here, you can go ahead and add more statements. You are the only required part of a Wikidata item is this box here with actually it's just with the label or with the identifier number, but preferably also with a description. Any additional statements are optional, but we do recommend adding at least an instance of statement. So this will tell anyone who's looking at this item or any automated process that is searching Wikidata that this is a human. And then from there, you would go on and add all the things like date of birth, occupation, gender, whatever you want to add, or whatever your data model wants you to add. So if you have, I just want to show you another way to add a name or add an item. So we have another name here, and this one I think should be a little bit more unique. Yes. So in this case, there are no results that have the phrase Elbert bird anywhere in them. So in this case, you can go to create a new item in the left panel again, or since your search didn't find anything, you can click here, create a new item, and this will take you to that same form again, but with the name, the label pre-filled in for you. And then we would follow the same thing again to add a short descriptive phrase, professor of political science. Add that in, click create, and we have another item with another distinct identifier. And just a short comment about notability guidelines. You can find more about these in the Wikidata help page that I shared earlier. But the sort of short story is, like I mentioned, Wikidata is a lot less rigorous in its guidelines for notability than Wikipedia is. So Wikipedia really wants the people that you create an article for to be well-known, important, linked to a lot of people. Wikidata basically just wants them to be people that you can make statements about and then provide resources for those that support those statements. And not just people, concepts, places, things, organizations, what have you. The main rule is that you are not necessarily doing it to support a commercial enterprise or try to, game an advertising system by creating Wikidata items. But other than that, as long as you can support your statements and preferably link the Wikidata item you've created to other items, then you are generally good to go.
Sorry, I was muted. Exactly. So let's talk about references, because like in any authority or in anything you do, any paper, references are of utmost importance. And by the way, just by the on the site, you will see a little bit more about that. My screen may look a little different than Sarah's and a little different of the one you open because of the configuration. This is kind of customizable. For instance, here I have a bunch of languages that I can speak or read, including the Hebrew version, which means if I wanted to add, and if it made any sense, I could add both the description and the Hebrew characters of this Klein and Schaffner, right? We'll see a little bit about that a little later. Okay, so how do we add a reference? See, for instance, that a few of these properties, 3 of them, have a little flaggy, okay? There are some suggestions for improving this statement. When you press on it, it says, statement for date of birth should at least have 1 reference, which makes kind of sense. You just don't go and assert that the person was born on such a date. Okay, so how do we add a reference? I took the URL from the finding aid, the URI of the finding aid of the University of Maryland for this person, since I took the information from there, and I click on add a reference, and I say reference URL, paste it, and I'm done. See, the flag is gone. I could have also added a little more data, for instance, retrieved. I retrieve it today. Okay, I could do the same for others. So it will be add a reference URL, add retrieved, publish. Okay, it is very simple. So usually you want to set references of whatever you're asserting, of course, particularly for the properties that have flags, because those are really important. Now, what are sources for reference? Most encyclopedias, Wikipedia itself, no Wikidata, Wikipedia, existing URLs that you consider authoritative, indexes of authors, even the AF or the authority file of the Library of the Congress, if it contains, I don't know, variation of the name, can be considered a valid reference as well. What So one of the reasons that I told you for your practical exercise to pick information or a short biography of something that you had online and not on paper is because citing, making a reference on Wikidata for something that is an online resource is much easier. However, you can still make a reference for something that is not online. Problem is that you would have to make sure that the book that you are citing is on Wikidata as well, because we are linking the person through the property to something that exists, okay? If the book you have, it's not there for some reason, then you will have to get the extra step of actually creating a record for the book that you want to refer, then simply copying it from here and pasting it into your reference. In this case, it doesn't make sense because it's
Excuse me, Neil.
yes.
If you were creating a record for yourself, could you put that you are the source of the information? Or if you're doing a family member or colleague, say, I know your date of birth because you told it to me.
Right. At this point, if I am not mistaken, no, you couldn't. You could leave it with other reference as well. Sarah, do you think this is possible?
I don't think it's recommended at this point. Like Neil said, you could just assert the information without providing a published reference.
Right.
Okay.
One of the things is if you do so and just don't justify your references, nobody's coming up to you with the stick. The record is there. If somebody knows the source of the information or knows the better information, they will not ask you permission. They will just go and edit. And it happens very often that I create a record and yes, I wrote the first 5 lines, but then when I revisit it after 3 months, it has 20 lines that came from everywhere in the world of people adding things. So essentially, this is the note also that if you have to establish a book like this one, Fonts por los Estudios de Comunidad Judía de Mallorca, which is about the Jews of Mallorca, you may also need to establish the author and establish the publisher, etc. Note also that there are a number of sources, articles, books, or whatever that are already on Wikidata. So don't worry, you have to create Encyclopedia Judaica because that's very common and it's there, okay? Yes.
Yeah, there are a few questions that have come up in the chat. One, can you show again how to add a reference?
Yes.
And while Neil is pulling that up, I'm gonna, Caroline Miller's noted that you can create your own ORCID ID and then cite that in the Wikidata record.
Right, exactly. Your ORCID ID will be a thing that's authoritative, that is there, and that can be used as a reference URL.
And Yossi Galron shared the edit history for Neil Frau Cortez. So
Wow.
you can take a look at that link as well and see what he's done.
Then you'll see all my craziness. Okay, so I go to a property that already exists. I could do the same with the property that I just create in the moment, okay? You see that it says it has 0 references and nothing to show. You click on here that says add reference. I hope this is big enough for you to see. Here, add reference. You write, you can it's autocomplete, right? Reference URL, paste. No, that's not it. Okay, this should have been the URI. No, URI is here. Okay, and you can publish right away. I like to add retrieved for the sake of saying, yes, I took it from here, but I took it in this on this date. By the way, you saw that it auto-completed the date of today, and this is because of a script that I have activated. So it won't come directly to you, but if you're interested, you're totally welcome to ask us, and we'll provide information. There are many other scripts. For instance, you will be lacking this copy. The copy script is intended for repeating the same reference in a bunch of different statements very quickly. But it is kind of a more advanced approach. There's a number of extra tools that we could use to expedite our creation of records. And if people are interested, maybe we can do a second workshop only on more advanced techniques. Does this answer your question about references, hopefully?
Yeah, she says thank you. And thanks, Sarah, for catching that question about the newspaper URL, which was responded to in the chat. Amalia asks, Neil, can you reference something to a Wikipedia article on that person, or is it a good practice to reference to something published or a finding aid, etc.?
I mean, as a good practice, you probably wanted to refer to another authority than to Wikipedia. But if you have to, if that's where the information is, or if you consider, okay, this article is really good and I see it's complete and whatever, yes, it is. In this case, you don't use the property reference URL, but Wikimedia import. So am I sharing my screen? No. Okay. So you would do it on the same way. You would say place of death, and instead of reference URL, you would say Wikimedia import URL, and here paste the URL for the Wikidata, the Wikipedia article. Oh, and now that I'm here, if you want to see the copy script in the works, you just click here, copy, insert reference. Sometimes you need to refresh the thing. Where am I? Reference, copy, insert reference.
Somebody asked about Snack. So I don't think Dina is here. Dina is our snack expert. But Neil, do you want to give a quick overview and also shout out to come to Dina's session at the conference where she's going to talk about Snack as well. But do you want to just describe that real fast?
Yes, I'm actually going to defer to Sarah, who is our Snack person.
So SNAC stands for Social Networks in Archival Context Cooperative, and it is, so I'm throwing the link to it in the chat. It is basically a site that pulls together names, entities essentially from finding aids from a very wide selection of libraries. And it has sort of a twofold purpose, which is to show the connection between entities. So if somebody has papers at multiple libraries, this would allow you to basically see all of those in one place and access them, and also see other people that they may be related to. So maybe they corresponded with somebody whose collections are at Maryland. Maybe that person had a third correspondent in between the two of them, and their papers are at yet another library. You can kind of see all of these links mapped out, and you can get access to the source materials. You can sort of see basically social networks of contemporary and historical figures. It's a very fun site, and the entities also have persistent identifiers, which you can put into a Wikidata item, which is, of course, the best part.
Thank you, Sarah. There's another question in the chat about adding a Jenny link. Renata says that she wasn't able to publish the URL and asks for suggestions.
Yes, the Jenny link is actually a property on itself, like VF is a property on itself. So you would go, instead of add reference URL, you would just go to the record. Let me am I going now, Sarah? Yes, I think so. Okay, so let me share the screen. So going back to our guy here, the way I added the snack arc ID, I could add, if I knew it, the Jenny DB ID, right? Or I could add, I don't know, the VF, or add the Library of Congress Authority ID, etc. Right? The Library of Israel, whatever. There's a number of options here. But you rather don't add this to here, because the intent of this section of the record identifiers is actually to link your record to another existing vocabulary. You could say the place of death I took from the Jenny ID record, right? And then you would add it as the reference, but it is not necessary. I mean, it is probably more useful to add it as an identifier at the bottom.
Neil, I have a sort of metadata question, DH, I guess, related. If you're working with a project that involves people, so it seems like there are so many different databases that track people, and they're all trying to link to one another. But is there one? Is Wikidata the one? Is VF the one? I don't think Jenny's the one. So this is something that I've been sort of thinking about a lot. I mean, it seems like there's so many of them, and yet what's the authoritative one, or are they all authoritative and we should just interlink?
I think they are all authoritative. However, personally, I have a predilection for VF. Why? Because once linked for VF, there is also a little script that populates anything linked to VF. It adds it to your record as well. Oh, I'll show you a little bit about that. But even if you don't, if you just created a little bridge to your VF record, in the big universe of linked data, your record is already there. And when you open VF, you'll see your record reflected there as Wikidata. It has a little icon with Wikidata, and it's that. If it's not linked, it won't happen. But as long as it's linked, it will appear on VF. Now, other vocabularies may be more useful, definitely, for people that are not on VF, like historical figures, archival material, people that appear, but they never wrote a graphic source for you to find on a national authority file. I don't know, things like that. So getting back to records, how much is enough? As Sarah said, a record is valid, quote unquote, as long as it has this box. It has the box that here you see in a bunch of languages, but you could see it only in English. with the label, the description, and if you want, an also known as. Okay. You may want to also say what kind of an instance is. Is it a human instance of human? Is it a book instance of literary work? Is it a corporation? Is it a school? That's what defines it. Okay. In this case, this is a very, very bare bones record about that not, right? That not, a book by Luzzatto, right? And I think, I don't know who created it. No, it was already created by somebody else. Here you see it in different languages. Essentially, it only has two statements: the instance of literary work and the author, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. Now, when a record has more lines, it may get really, really elaborated. Here is Nachmanides, for instance, whose Catalan name, by the way, was Bonastruc Suporta, that I added personally there. So here you see it in different languages, the description in Hebrew, the variations in Hebrew. I don't know if you see it properly. There you go. So Ramban, Migdulei, Chochmei, Sfarad, Dumei, Shlosh, etc. Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, etc. And if you scroll down, you have all this impossible list of statements, including instance of human, but also linked to an image, the fact that he was a male, that he was born in the crown of Aragon, the different pseudonyms where he is buried, the occupation. He was a rabbi, a poet, philosopher, physician, and even a Kabbalist. He was a member of the Kabbalistic school of Girona, etc. So a bunch of them. So when to stop? Whenever you feel like there is enough. The good thing about Wikidata is that you can create a bare bones record, or you can go crazy, or you can just create a bare bones record and have the universe contribute to it and add to it whatever they know. As people from many different countries and contexts are adding information, the result can be pretty interesting. Sometimes there are contradictions, and then there are ways of marking, okay, this is the preferred information, this is some other information that somebody dropped in. By the way, something that I never told you yet is that all records, whatever you do on Wikidata or on Wikipedia, have a history. So you can know who added properties. And this J. Galron sounds like Yossi. So I see that he added an ID for the National Library of Russia, for instance. If I consider this is wrong, I can undo it, which is not wrong, or I can even thank him or restore the original version. So it is self-policed. Usually the community is really mindful and there are not major problems. Oh, by the way, on this site over here, you see a whole series of links to Wikipedia in German, in Arabic, in Spanish, in French, or whatever. Somebody added those here and some other just pre-populated to this record, while our poor that only has the Hebrew link that. Okay.
Neil, there was another question, I guess this is for Sarah, about SNAC, which was how do you put a reference into SNAC? And I guess how does somebody from an individual library connect their archives to SNAC? maybe Sarah stepped away. Okay,
Sarah,
so we have.
are you muted, or maybe she got a connection problem? Oh, all right. So I cannot tell you exactly. She will probably tell you better. It is a system on itself. So for the training I took, you create the record, and then there's a separate tab to actually add all of your sources and references and link them to the tab where the description is. If you go to SNAC, you will find, like it was in the case of University of Maryland, that there have been earlier ingests. So some of your collections may already be on SNAC, and you may want to join SNAC as an institution and actually correct whatever data is insufficient or obsolete, definitely. And Sarah's back.
Hi, sorry, minor pet emergency now resolved.
So the question was how to get connected to SNAC from a particular institution.
I see somebody mentioned Dina Herbert at NARA, and she would definitely be a good person to reach out to. Basically, let's see, let me put another link in the chat and send that to everyone. So you can learn more about SNAC on their website. They basically, your institution can become a member. They have some situations where an individual can also get trained on editing SNAC. At the moment, membership is free, but it may that may change in the future because they're currently a grant project. Yeah, they have online training that takes place roughly once a month. They take a break in the summer. It's fairly straightforward. So it's a very similar style of editing interface to Wikidata. So it's pretty easy to just sort of point and click and enter information into forms.
Yeah, and Dina's actually a past president of AJL, and she'll be presenting at SNAC about SNAC at the conference too. So be sure to attend her session if you're interested in learning more.
Totally recommended that you guys join SNAC because it's a great project.
And I think I heard Neil mentioning that we have a lot of messy data to clean up, so it can definitely benefit from more contributors.
I'm just being mindful of the time. We're at about 1:22. So before I ask for additional questions, I just want to thank Opal's MediaFlex for sponsoring this session. And I put a link in the chat earlier to their website. And then see if there are any further questions before we head to a close.
I wanted to ask something, Neil and Sarah, of course. It's in the back of my mind always the issue of notability, particularly because there have been critiques about SNAC that because it is based on finding aids which prioritize elite voices and elite voices that represent dominant voices in the archives. So let's say in Wikidata, if we want to create records for not notable, so to speak, people. So so we can create, but then those are not really linked in the greater linked data world. How does this happen, Neil, if you have an idea?
Yes, you can create them. Actually, a number of our archival collections have, I don't know, a collection of invoices from a farmer in the Civil War, which will not be in any VF or in anything else. There is a less strict notability criterion, like Wikipedia is particularly more strict, but not Wikidata. And sometimes you will see, like browsing people, that some people are called only peerage person and the name, meaning you really don't know much about them, but this person was the father of this other person. So you can create a kind of a dummy record with as a person that is not necessarily super relevant and you don't have a lot of information of it. It is unlikely nobody will erase it because of lack of notability. It may happen. The person that does that needs to suggest it to the community, and the community needs to say, okay, this needs to go. Now, if your 2-line record has the name and you have a link saying archives at your institution, that in itself gives it a notability that nobody will question. So the point is that there are many records, and some of them are full of information, some of them are kind of more of a link between different parts of information.
Okay, it sounds like we didn't even get to the practical part. There might have to be a Wikidata hands-on part 2 down the road. This has been really fruitful and a lot of engagement. Here's my reminder to you that if you want to save all those links in the chat, click the 3 dots next to File in the chat box, and you'll be given an option to save the chat. So I'm going to give an extra minute to do that. And in the meantime, I'm going to thank our speakers, Neil Cortez and Sarah Halde, for really helpful and engaging presentation. And I think there'll be a lot of follow-up afterwards. So thank you all. And as always, the recording will be posted behind the members only, to the members only space on the AJL website. Have a good one. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.